and welcome to Percentages of Amounts with Cubitt Education. In this lesson, you will learn how to find percentages of amounts with a calculator and how to find percentages of amounts without a calculator. So first of all, let's look at finding a percentage with a calculator. So let's find 20% of 450. Now, can you remember what 20% is as a decimal? Now, if you can remember, that's great. And if not, all you have to do is divide 20 by 100. You should be able to do that easily in your head, and you might also remember the pattern that we talked about where it's just going to be 0.2. So technically we're dividing by 100, but if you can remember the pattern, 20% is 0.2. That's even better because you'll be quicker at your calculations. So 0.2 then, and all we need to do now is multiply the decimal by the 450, which is the number that we're trying to find 20% of. So 0.2 times 450 is 90. So 20% of 450 is 90. Let's look at another example. 24% of 600. Again, if you can remember the pattern, then you should know, but if not, we just divide it by 100 and it's 0.24. It's a really simple pattern to remember. We just move the decimal point 2 places back. So 0.24 then, and all we do is times that by 600 and it gives us 144. Why don't you pause the video and have a go at this one? Okay, so if you pause the video and had a go, let's look at this then. So 36%, you should know by now, it's 0.36 as a decimal. Again, if you can't remember that, percent just means out of 100, so it might just give you a clue to divide it by 100 to give you the decimal. And we'll just do 0.36 times 700, and that will give us 252. So let's have a look at doing all of those without a calculator, because most of the time you'll get percentage questions in the non-calculator papers. So it all starts with either finding 10% or 1% of the number. So in this case, we're going to try and find 10% or 1% of 450. Sometimes you might have to do both. It's really simple. So to find 10%, we just divide 450 by 10. Okay, or you can remember it this way, just take off a 0. To find 1%, we divide it by 100. So we can either think of it as taking off a 0 and then going back another space, or we can just think about it as going back 2 spaces because there are 2 zeros in 100. So that will give us 4.5. So because percent means out of 100, then remember, everything is about that 1%, about those 10%, all right? So 10% will be 45. We just take off the 0. So 20% then must be 2 lots of 10%. So we don't need to find 1% in this case. It doesn't give us anything if we find 1%, so we don't need it. We only need to find the 10% because once we've found that, we just double it. We double the 10 to give us 20, which means double 45 would give us 90. So 20% of 450 is 90. So we find the 10% and then we just double it. So in this case, 24%. Now, we probably will have to find 1%. So again, to find 10%, we divide by 10. To find 1%, we divide by 100. So 10% of 600, we just take off the 0. That gives us 60. And then 1%, we take off both zeros and it gives us 6. So nice and easy so far. But altogether, we need 24%. So you could think of it like this. We need 2 lots of the 10 to give us the 20, and 4 lots of the 1 to give us the 4%. So let's look at this. 20% then. If 10% is 60, then 20% must be double that. So 60 times 2 is 120. That will give us our 20%. Now let's find the 4%. We know that 1% is 6. So I want 4 of those. 4% must be 4 times that. So 6 times 4 is 24. So now we have the 20% and the 4%. We just need to add those together. 20% is 120, 4% is 24. Altogether, that's 144. Okay, finally, let's find 36% of 700. Now, there's two ways we can do this. Let's look at the 10% and 1% we could find. To find 10%, remember, we divide 700 by 10 to give us 70. And to find 1%, we divide 700 by 100 to give us 7. Okay? Now, let's try and find the 30% first. If 10% is 70, then 30% must be 3 times that. 70 times 3 is 210. So 30% of 700 is 210. Now let's find the 6%. First of all, we can find 5%. Now that would be a bit easier than using the 1%. Sometimes we'll do it this way and then I'll show you the 1% way. So let's find 5%. So 5% would be half of the 10%. 10% was 70, so if we divide that by 2, it gives us 35. So that's our 5%. We just need the 1% now, and we know that 1% is the 700 divided by 100, which gives us 7. So altogether, 6% is 5 plus 1%, which is 35 plus 7, which is 42. So again, altogether, we need the 30 and the 6%. So 30% is 210, 6% is 42, altogether that's 252. Now there's another way, like I said, to find the 6%. So let's just recap. To find 30%, we find 10%, which is 70, and then the 30% must be 3 times that. So 70 times 3 is 210. 30% is 210. To find the 6%, we can find 1% first. So 1% was 7, remember? We just divided 700 by 100 to find 1%. And then, if I want 6%, not 1%, I'd need 6 lots of that 1%. So 6 lots of 7, which is 42. 210 plus 42 is 252. So it's just about breaking down the numbers into percentage parts and adding the ones together that you need. So pause the video and find these percentages of amounts using a calculator. I'll repeat that, using a calculator. So if you pause the video, let's look at the answers then. You should have had 115, 3.12, 34.3 and 37.5. This one you would have done 0.23 times 500, 0.13 times 24, 0.07 times 490 and 0.125 times 300. So pause the video again and have a go at these 4 without a calculator. Without a calculator. Okay, if you've paused the video, 15% of 500 is 75. So just to recap, 10% would have been 50 and 5% would have been 25. Okay. 25% of 24 is 6, 8% of 490 is 36, and 18% of 300 is 54. So I hope you did well on those. Well done, and thank you so much for using Cubitt Education, and I'll hopefully see you soon.